All right, so let's jump right into it. Thank you for making the time. I know you're a busy person with a lot of different facets of your organization where you're working on right now. So why don't you start with telling me a little bit about your personal military experience, why you joined, stuff like that.
All right. Well, first of all, Shawn Durnen, president of Nine Land Veteran Services. Honestly, man, everything that I've done to this point has been a slip, trip, and fall from every bad experience a soldier can have during transition to here.
Okay.
Right? Like, so my story's a funny one, and it's also kind of a sad one, but I laugh about it either way. Like, so for Nine Line, I got out of the service back in like 2010. Came back from Iraq, really just confused. Like, didn't understand a lot of things that had happened, where I was going in life. Really fell into like some bad addiction, bad relationships. I slipped, tripped, and fell into every bad choice, again, a transitioning service member could make, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, clearly, U.S. Army, come from a family of soldiers, from my grandfather in World War II, all the way to my uncle in Vietnam, then my brother and I in Iraq.
So definitely no Navy in there.
Well, my brother's Navy. I'm Army. My grandfather was Army. My uncle was Army. But then my other uncle was Marine. So, like, the holidays around my house, man, are crazy.
I bet there's a whole lot of friendly conversations.
Yeah, we'll call it friendly.
Call it friendly.
right. So that was kind of like how I got into the human services field. So even after I got out of the service, like, there was a couple of years where I couldn't figure anything out. So I went right to where I knew, which was the engineering field. Like, I was a heavy equipment operator in the Army, with the Engineer Corps. And so I got out, but then I messed my leg up. Like, I just got my journeyman's license, and some punk kid out in Seattle dropped like 35,000 pounds on my leg and snapped it like a twig.
Yeah, that'll do it.
That did it. And then
it was on the construction site, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. L&I got involved.
Oh, yeah, the whole
9 yards.
Bro, it was a nightmare. So, essentially, like, coming out of that, I thought, well, my leg's going to heal. I'll be able to go back. And then they're like, nah, man, you're done. So that's when I, like, thought about it. And I was still dealing with, like, all these issues from, like, my baby mom to, like, again, my addiction issues. And then I was a single parent at the time, so I was trying to get my life right. And I just
and now your leg's crushed.
My leg's crushed. And I'm, like, just strung out on medicine, trying to get my life right. And I couldn't figure it out. So it was a lot, man. Like, that, the weight of that in my family, like, it was just a lot. And so that's kind of what led me thinking about, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to support my children? Am I a good dad? Where's my next move at? And that's kind of what pushed that forward. So thinking about that in retrospect, like, it was a lot of work to get where I'm at now, man. And that was just like, welcome to the civilian sector. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. That was your first experience back. Because a lot of people understand that, and they think at boot camp is, we're going to build you down, break you down, and build you back up the way we need you. It's not necessarily like that for everybody. Other people have really different experiences where they completely decide to be a completely new person. And now you are who you are when you're wearing a uniform. You're not, Eddie Lowry. Like, for me, I wasn't Eddie before. I was Lowry. It's my last name. And I was trying to represent for my family, trying to be a good individual. I wanted to be a great father in the future. I didn't necessarily know that I was going to have a great creation of my own identity and separating from the rest of the entire world with finding myself in the military.
And that's really where I was at, man. Like, I didn't know what was next for Shawn, right? Because I was Durnen, right? Everyone knew me as Durnen. Like, came from this, like, small town punk kid. And I say small town, like, coming out of Detroit, coming out of Michigan, like, growing up, either was join the military or you're going to find yourself in jail, right?
Yes. So,
like, I joined the service just like everybody else. And at the time, man, coming out of Detroit with the big three, so the automotive industry had crashed. I lost my everything. So the option was going to the service. But that's my point, right? Like, I had nothing. And then coming back, going to war, come back out of that, in the civilian sector, it was just rinse, repeat, and do over again, right? But now we threw in some trauma, we threw in some combat stress, we threw in all the things. And I'm sitting there going, well, damn, what do I do, right? Like, coming out of that, like, there's no real way to process any of that. Like, my mind was gone. So then, luckily enough, and people look at me like I'm crazy for this, man, but luckily enough at the time, I got arrested. And people are like, why is that lucky? I'm like, because that's when everything changed. or started to change. I'd gone through the court process. I had a judge really go lenient on me and suggested I go get help. So then I started going to the vet center for therapy and doing all these things and really rebuilding my life, man. At the time, I was, again, a single dad, and then I had someone help us with some rent, put some food on the table, and then they suggested, well, why don't you go back to school? And so I did. I took advantage of some benefits, went back to school. I was working some dead-end job, graveyard, out Pexco, actually. I say that, but like they were some good people, man. Pexco out here in Auburn.
Yeah.
So I was putting together like lawn equipment and stuff like that at midnight, and I'd work all night, go to school in the morning for 4 or 5 hours, and then go pick my son up and just go get a nap in and do it all over again. I did that for 2 years.
Yeah.
Bro, it was the shit. Like it was just the shit. Like
there's nothing better than working on yourself and realizing the progress you make and being able to come back from not having and not knowing what your situation is can be very, very difficult. I experienced that coming back where I left for the military with nothing but a knife, my orders, and my cell phone, and an address book of where my sister and my wife, not my now wife, my current girlfriend at the time, lived. That's all I had. And I came back and I felt like I had just thrown away everything again. Like I came back with a sea bag full of things I'm never going to wear again, and a whole lot of confusion of what to do next. Ended up wiping down tables for 70 hours a week until I got into elevator trade, and now it's better. But there's always been that confusion of how do I also give back and how do I help other people bridge this gap. I don't like feeling lost either. Feeling lost, like you don't know what to do next. It's not my thing. Okay, it's not my thing. Thank God for Google Maps.
Right, because it's the worst. You don't. It's funny because we always complain about we don't know where we're going, but truly you don't know where you're going until you know where you came from, and you can't grow from that until you know what the possibility is. 100%. So like, even though at the time, man, like you said, right? Like I was dealing with a crazy baby mom. I barely could put food on the table. Like I was eating ramen a lot, just so my baby boy had somewhere to lay his head, do all these things. And honestly, if it wasn't for these people who came into my life, like I don't even know where I'd be for today, let alone the president and CEO of my own company. You know what I'm saying? 100%. Right. And so, looking at that for what it is, like I grew from that, right? And like going to college and getting my human services certifications, getting the continued education certifications. And then like bridging and mapping that out to where I could get continued education credits from different institutions around the country, because I wanted to grow myself, right? And I knew that if I wanted to be this good person, I had to be a better person for my kids. In that same process, it gave me the key, which is so beautiful for me. Truly, whenever I look about it, man, like looking at my kids today, like you would never tell the hardships we went through. You know what I mean? Yeah. They're very well adjusted. They're very loving, very caring. Like I joke about it because, like, I grew up a fighter, man, and my son is just a lover. Like, hands down, he's just a lover. He doesn't want anything to do with violence. He doesn't want he's just a kind-hearted kid. And I always tell him, if nothing else, his sister's got his back. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I
love that, man. I think it's always been said that a parent's dream is that their child never has to struggle through the same thing. As long as they start, I think it got put a little bit of a spin on it this last week when I heard it last. It was like, as long as he learns some damn thing from my lessons.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I mean, look, growing up broke, there was nothing fun about it. Nothing. Right? And like, I'm the oldest of 4 boys, right? My poor mother, people would call her crazy, but I'm like, we got her there. So we grew up with nothing, man, like just nothing, right? And like, looking at it for what it was, at the time, I didn't know what all these nuances were. Like, I had no base concept of like, this isn't okay, right? Because like,
that's your normalcy.
That was it. That was absolutely it. Like, this is where I'm from. This is what the expectation was, and then leaving that life, and even just going into the military, let alone across the country, right? Like, I mean, given like we traveled a lot and we moved a lot because we were broke and we were always moving from house to house, but like, never just completely across the entire country at one time. Like, so coming from a lifestyle of where, I knew the hustle, I knew where I was coming from, I knew what the streets expected of me, to all of a sudden I'm in this brand new concept of life. Like, what the hell? And then leave that concept of life where you've been told how to eat, drink, walk, talk, everything, to now I'm back on the street in a brand new state. Because Washington looks a little different when you're on active duty versus when you're on the street with no military behind you, right? So then I had to rewrite me, and that was a nightmare in itself, man. So I look back on these things constantly, like, how do I get where I'm going? How do you keep going? How do you keep going? And how do you motivate others to understand where you're from? Well, there's a level of humility there, but there also has to be a certain level of arrogance. And I tell people, you have to. Because when people come to me at their most vulnerable times, I remind them, like, look, I'm human too. This is how I got where I'm going. But it took a lot of work. And I'm not one of those people who's naive to the fact that, like, you know, when we say pull yourself up by your bootstraps, that's a stretch, man. Like, not everybody has the ability to do that. We talk about...
Not everybody.
No, and America looks a lot different today. A lot different. We got people struggling because of... Well, I mean, that's nothing new. But we got people struggling because of the color of their skin, because of their minority status, because of their veteran status, because of their disability status, because they're a woman. We pay them less. We treat them differently. So me looking at it from a dad, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm always going to be that punk little Detroiter. But, like, looking at it as a dad, right? I'm looking at my kids going, oh, no, this is not going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like, so how do we change that? How do we change the tone? How do we change the narrative? How do we change the story? And I'm looking at my, like I said, meeting with people every day, right? And I'm telling them, look, I'm sorry you're where you're at. I'm sorry this is going on. Let me help you. Not because I'm obligated to, not because it's my job, because I genuinely care. And I know what it's like to be down on your ass. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
100%.
Oh man, it just kills me. And coming from the Midwest, knowing the culture out there and seeing the shape of the world that it's in, and then, like, knowing my story, it's been hard, man. Just watching the world unfold the way it is.
There's a lot of weird things going on in today's day and age, and not just what we see throughout social media or necessarily on the news. In real world level, when we talk to our neighbors, we can see the difficulties that people actually go through. I've never seen a time like this where single mothers are absolutely getting crushed.
Yeah.
And more veterans are ending up on the streets. A lot of their veteran suicide is at an all-time high. The Navy is currently the highest-ranking suicide rate, which is kind of against what society would believe. But what I've learned from a couple of clinical psychiatrists recently is with their studies that people struggle with greater amounts of PTSD who have never even seen combat experience versus ones that have. And that might be completely contrary to what the world thinks, but there's a lot of different issues that we're facing as a society right now. And I think that everybody can do some look up from your phone, look around you, see who might be off, see who might looks like they, hey, I saw you, I see you got an American flag on your shoulder, like this just happened to me last week. You got an American flag on your shoulder. Do you just like it, or were you in the military too? And I talked to this guy who served in Korea, and he's a homeless vet. 2 days later, throughout just talking to other veteran coordinators, Tony, Josh, a bunch of different people, we found him a place to live in. Like, it's very, very simple when we all work together, but we can't do that if we don't have the proper resources, if we don't have the information. It's always around us, especially in Washington State, I guess. This is a great place to be. You know what?
It is. I mean, you got to think about it like this. So all those people you named off, like Tony Dayton, one of my dearest friends, Josh Wielden, same thing, right? So, like, coordinated care. That's what got us to this point, right? So a lot of these guys came up together, right? And I say these guys because at the end of the day, 10, 12 years ago when we started this push, it didn't look the way it does today, right? Washington State, coming out of the service, look, you got so many options coming out now. Like, there's people, resources waiting for you the second you step foot out the gate. But even then, that doesn't mean people know how to access them, right? So we made a conscious choice a lot of years ago that we weren't going to let people go through the same hardships we did. And I'm not going to sit here and, talk to Josh's plight or Tony's plight. I mean, I do know their stories, but that's a different day for a different story, right? What I will say is that all of us have gone through the trenches together to get where we're at now. And part of those stories and going through those trenches together was understanding that we made a promise to each other in our community that we would never let someone else go through these issues if we didn't have to. And so, like, for me, going through homelessness, addiction, all these different things, I knew that one thing stood above everything else. I wanted to be that voice of the people who they could come to, right? And so, coming out of that school environment, the first time I was actually exposed to veteran services, Garrison East, man, Lieutenant Dan?
Yes.
Yeah, my guy, man. So
he is absolutely amazing. I watched, someone did a 3-minute video, and they put it out about the things he does. and I was just bawling my eyes out. I didn't, because I was still active duty. I was just watching it on my phone one day after work.
Yeah.
Like Geo Bachelor, 3,000 miles away from my wife or any other friends that I know. So I'm sitting there and watching it, and I just start bawling up because it's amazing.
Right.
It takes an extraordinary person. I mean, it shouldn't. I mean, this is just what normal good people do.
Right.
But in today's day and age, it's not very common to see people do random acts of kindness just out of the kindness of the heart to help and fully benefit somebody else.
Absolutely. It's funny too because it was a full circle experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I met Gary Sinise when I was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. It was my third week of basic training, and we got to go out there, and then Lieutenant Dan Band was playing and everything, and so we got to go out there, and like I got to shake the man's hand. We had to stand at attention the whole time, which sucked, but whatever. Well, we're still in red week, yellow week, all the things.
Oh yeah.
And so we get out there, shake the man's hand, and I open it, and it's a Gary Sinise coin, like from the Sinise Foundation. So we're kicking it and everything, and then years later, I'm at Clover Park Technical College out here in Lakewood, and the Washington State Military Transition Council, led by the current WDVA director, actually she was retiring at the end of the month, which sucks because I love her, but Alfie Alvarado Ramos. She invited Gary Sinise to sit in on the Transition Council as they were talking about the reduction of force. So at the time, the military was reducing its number of service members, everything like that. And then
it's like mass layoffs.
Oh, yeah. And the economic downfall for the surrounding areas, DuPont, Tacoma, all these things. And I was welcome to come. So all of a sudden, I'm standing there, and I look, and I turn around, and there's Gary Sinise. And he's talking to me, man. He's like, hey, where do I go? How do you... and I'm like, hey man, you gave me your coin, and at the time I always carried my favorite coins on me. You know what I'm saying?
Why not?
And so I pulled out my Sinise Foundation coin, and he's like, oh yeah, man, I remember when I was in Missouri for that concert, and we're just chopping it up like two old buddies. And then they go up there and talk, and randomly enough, he's like, yeah, I met this young student today, and he's doing great things with veterans, and I just want to say, hey Shawn, like all these cool things. And from that point, Alfie came over and talked to me, and she goes, what are you going to school for? What are you doing with your life? And I told her, and she goes, okay. She goes, I want you to sign up and be part of this program that we're launching, which was Vet Corps at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I went and served a couple of years on Vet Corps. I started on the campus, helping veterans get access to benefits, services, everything. Yeah,
they've helped one of my good friends, one of our mutual friends.
I think.
Yes.
Yeah, no, amazing.
Amazing.
And then after I was done with that, they asked me to come on as a regional coordinator. So I was managing all these Vet Corps members in that area. But not only was I managing that, I was also working with the local legislation on best practices, passing bills, doing these things, and learning what that legislative process looked like. So being part of writing the rules, man, like that was a game changer for me, because I'm this punk kid who just came from college, worked in boots on ground at this factory, and now I'm up here hanging out with Jay Inslee and all these guys. Like, what? Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm hanging out there, we're doing the thing, and then that's how I got involved with all these other cats. Like I met Josh Wilden at the time. He was working, who was he working for? Valley Cities out there in Auburn. Him and the mayor of Ording, Josh Penner, a good buddy of mine. And so met them. I got hooked up with the Michigan Continues. I was the platoon leader with them for like 3 years. Mm-hmm. We were doing service projects. We were doing national tours with this stuff. Got to meet all sorts of cool people, man, and just work on so many projects. And then finally, when I came back, it got to a point where I was like, well, what's next, right? Because we talk about that growth, right? So part of that humility and part of that arrogance is understanding that there's a certain level of growth that comes with it, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a balancing act. Sometimes you dip in the wrong sides. And
right.
Life smacks you back sometimes. It's really interesting stuff.
Right, man. And so, like, we were constantly doing different projects, like from the VA Mental Health Summit to, like, the Ording Soldiers Homes, like, different things that we could do in the community. And finally, I was like, well, I want to build something, man. And so at the time, we had built this project. It was a one-day project, the Veterans Resource Fair, and I hosted it at Green River College, right? So out near neck of the woods. And so we went down there. We spent a day. We had about 25 providers show up, maybe 20 attendees. No big deal. Year 4 into this program, we hosted it at the Tacoma Dome. Mm-hmm. That first year we hosted at the Tacoma Dome, we had over 25,000 people show up and 250 providers. And I mean, everywhere from the VA to all this just came in. And it wasn't like this bureaucratic nightmare. It was veterans helping veterans.
I love that.
Oh, bro.
Because when I think about different organizations, with my personal experience, I think of, the bad news travels faster than good news, obviously, right? Everyone falls, as a recipient of the Gossip Girl stuff is what I call it, Gossip Girl. It's a pass around all the negative stuff. Like, did you hear what this happened? Like, my buddy's getting turned away. You hear about people getting denied at the front door of the VA because they brought their service dog with them, and the security guard was having a bad mood that day and told them to get the fuck out. People have weird, bad experiences, and that can sometimes throw veterans off. And I got reminded this a couple weeks ago that if you just try a little bit harder, you might find out something more beautiful on the other side of that hill you're walking up.
Absolutely. And that's what it came to, was how do we create? It wasn't a matter of who was getting what out of this or this or this. It was, what do you create? And so coming out of that and seeing full circle what that looked like, man, like it was, oh my God, it was just so beautiful. So fast forward a little bit on that, right? We came together as a team, all of us from different angles of the state, coordinating services, coordinating care, figuring out on the very grassroots micro level, how do we meet veterans where they're at? So that involved a lot of outreach. And the people, man, that I got to meet during this process, like not even just in the state, but across the country. Like
General Matters.
Mad Dog, man, that's my boy. I couldn't talk for the first couple seconds as I'm shaking this man's hand. Yeah. All I remember thinking to myself is, you're a lot shorter than I remember. Like, right? Like, because, you see a presence like that, and he's this
booming personality.
But he's short.
Exonerates confidence in every way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Like, he is the definition of excellence.
Yeah.
Right. And he's just short, like short Marine, you know what I'm saying? So, like, I'm shaking this man's hand, and he's like, you all right? And I realized I wasn't talking. Like, I'm so taken back by this leader. This man has had an exceptional career, and all I can say to him is, yes sir, I'm fine. Like, that's all I could say to him. And he goes, let's go sit down and eat. And at the time, one of our corporate sponsors, Humana, was there, and we were doing like the Vietnam veteran pinning ceremony and the memorial release and everything that we worked with Boeing on and all these different things. And he wanted to meet me. I got General Mathis sitting in front of me, and he wanted to meet me. I'm at loss, man. He sits down, and he's talking policy and everything with everybody else around him. He sits down with me. He goes, look, you young troop, right? Yeah, I'm young troop. He goes, let's quit the bullshit. And then he started talking to me like a Marine to a soldier, you know what I mean? Like, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, okay, cool. That is what it is. And then we started laughing about shit. And people are looking at us like, what are these two clowns talking about? Because they can hear us literally cackling. Like, I mean, two old hens, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, they're just cackling, man. And so anyway, so we started talking and everything, and it turns out that he was there because he made a promise to the Vietnam veterans that if there was ever a memorial in Washington State, that he would be there personally to commemorate it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's like, I appreciate your generation of soldier, young man, and that's what he called me, and I appreciate that. I grew up in Michigan, so I understand. And I go, okay, sir, well, what's the problem? He goes, well, let's walk. And we walked, and everybody's celebrating him and shaking my hand. Like, I don't know everybody here, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, he introduces everybody, and then he goes up on stage, and he talks about how he made that promise. And he shook my hand, and he goes, the only thing I regret today is that I don't have a Secretary of Defense coin to give you. And I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty upset about that. And he laughed. He goes, you'll get over it, quit bitching. And walked out, man. Like,
it sounds about right, man.
But it's those little moments, right? Like, again, in my career, man, doing this now 12, 13 years, like, I've met some exceptional change generators. And most recently, working with the state legislature for the House Bill 1181, right? Everybody saw the big news release with the 988 crisis line and everything that just happened there. But what they don't see is the time that was taken behind the scene, right? So the last 4 years, myself along with nonprofit leaders, federal leaders, state leaders, all joined up on this governor's commission on state suicide. And we joined 44 other states across the U.S. on what was started by SAMHSA as the State Suicide Prevention Commission, or in their words, the Governor's Challenge. So this was bringing together all the experts on military veterans, and my background is mental health, suicide prevention, things like that.
Yeah.
And so we got involved and started developing the best practices, but not only locally, working with stakeholders all across the country. And we were meeting with these people all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, during COVID, what else did you have to do, right? We'd Zoom in and we'd talk to other leaders across the state, and it helped us really hone in and develop that state suicide prevention plan.
Mm-hmm. 3 numbers is a lot better to remember than 15.
Absolutely.
Or 100 numbers. For me, someone's dyslexic, I can remember 988.
Right, and I'm
ADD.
ADD.
License plates.
Oh yeah, and I'm like ADD as all hell, man. Like I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. Oh wait, that's shiny. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So for me, it was, let's simplify this. Let's make it accessible for everybody. Mm-hmm. But it also still holds that impact. Yeah. Right.
It definitely does. I have a couple friends last week who called.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It worked wonders. Having somebody who doesn't even know your name, doesn't need to know your whole life story, you don't have to play catch up. They just need to know what you're going through, and they want to listen, and they want to offer resources, and they want to direct you to someone who's also going to have as much compassion, empathy, and concern for your livelihood as I wouldn't say, I should say it like this. There's when you don't care about yourself, you need someone to help you kind of balance that out. So it's nice to have somebody that can pour water into your cup to make it half full again when it's empty.
Correct. And there's something to be said about, it also gives you a certain level of acceptance, mm-hmm. right? Like, to date, we as a culture, right? I'm going to derail it for just a second, but like we as a culture have this taboo sense of mental health.
Yes.
Right? Like it's weak to admit that you're suicidal. It's weak to think that you have mental health issues. It's weak to think, there's nothing weak about it. Whether you were a gung-ho infantryman, if you're the, records depot person, if you work at the DMV, it doesn't matter. You're human. We're human. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So taking the time to understand that, like, realistically, like, everyone suffers from some form of mental health issues. We just have this indoctrined way of saying, like, oh, you're just weak, you're weak, you're weak. But realistically, I'm cognizant enough to say I need help.
Yes, and it's important to recognize, our strengths and weaknesses. I've ran into Navy SEALs, to Green Berets, to Air Force, whatever. I don't even know what they call Air Force fucks, whatever they don't know. whatever they call.
I was gonna crack a joke, but you know.
Okay, all
yeah.
right. And then the coach, like, everybody. All jokes aside, everybody goes through major, serious issues, and it's not the same for everybody. A small thing for us might be a horrible, huge thing for somebody else who hasn't had as much life experience. And the more life experience you have, it can either make you, or not really break you, but it can make you feel like you're not as strong as before. But the really strength comes from recognizing your times of difficulty and how to recognize trauma for what it is and how to work on it as well. Before we continue, I want to just let you know that here at Off the Deep End Podcast, we do talk about some things that can be extremely triggering for some of the listeners, whether it's domestic violence, suicide prevention, mental health resources, vet resources, veteran stories, active shooters, fitness, and even recovering from addictive substances. There's only one place I go to spread my message of positivity about not just going through things, but growing through them as well. For this, I use Anchor.fm. It allows my listeners to listen on over 7 platforms with a click of a button. Make sure you download Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started sharing your story. Sorry, it's never happened. I cracked the Air Force joke and my stepdad's choking me out from far away. Jesus Christ. All right. Sorry about that.
No, you're good, man. So again, it just comes back to that whole, that taboo sense, right? We want to try to alleviate that stress, break down those barriers. Especially now that we understand that there's more nuances to mental health than just the services, than just the experiences that people are feeling. It's access and barriers to those care. 9-Line, for instance, we're stationed out here in Tacoma, Washington, but we're serving veterans all over the country, right? Through partnerships with the VA, through ETS sponsorship, all these different programs, like, again, with the Seahawks, with Task Force 12, we have all these community contributors who are helping us build a better tomorrow. But realistically, we're not even talking about all the barriers facing people who are trying to access services. So having to struggle with mental health issues, having to struggle with suicidal ideations, having to struggle with separation anxiety, family problems, especially when you talk about transitional issues, you're talking about, again, I know I said it earlier, but when you come out of a place that helps you how to eat, walk, breathe, think, dress, and
Everything.
now everything, right? And now you're coming into this brand new character. All you've known your young adult life, because most people when they enlist are 18, 19 years old,
Yeah.
is how to be told what to do, right? You went from mom and dad to this whole organization to now you're out on your own. And that 90 days we know, those first 90 days coming out of the service, we know are the most likely point in which somebody is going to face a severe mental health crisis. And part of that is understanding that, especially in Tacoma, and I can only talk to Tacoma at this point, right? But in cities like Tacoma, you have barriers to access to care. If you're a minority, if you're a woman, if you're a dependent, if you're, transgender, if you're all these things, now you're talking about additional barriers to getting access. Mm-hmm. And when you live in an economically unsound area, your biggest worry is, do I have a roof over my head? Do I have clothes on my back? Can I feed my children? Can I do these things? So how are we reaching those individuals? We're not. So not only do you have the struggle of dealing with mental health issues, you have the struggle of leaving the only identity you've ever known. Then you have the issues of, well, now my wife's mad at me. I'm not providing. I'm not being that person. It weighs down on you, and then now you're just stacking the odds, right? Because now you're already suffering with the depression of the matter, but now you have to deal with everything that's the comorbidities of the matter, the secondary issues. And if you don't know about the VA, if you don't know about the care, where are you at?
Absolutely.
And it's scary, man. So that was the point and principle of what we do. I mean, coming from that background myself, I can tell you I've had my own fights with mental health. I can tell you that I would be remiss if I didn't state that, I've tried to take my own life. I mean, let's make this an uncomfortable reality, and make it more comfortable, right? Because some of our greatest leaders in this country have admitted their open fights with mental health.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, it has to be normalized. It has to be looking at in the sense of, we can help you, right? Let's stop making it some secondary issue where people can't get access to those services. So that said, that's why 9line exists. That's why we came to fruition, from the Veterans Resource Fair to building out that community of care. We learned one thing that day, that beautiful day at the Tacoma Dome. We learned one very important lesson, was if we bring community providers together for a common goal in a common place, all at one location, we can do anything.
Yeah, remove the barriers that separate us. It's almost like putting on your cell phone and talking to all your neighbors in your whole street all at once.
Absolutely.
And you're removing the echo chambers that we all live in, right? And which I think is important, because you already kind of touched on a little bit, the stigma around mental health and suicide prevention. The idea of preventing suicide comes with it being talked about. You can't talk, if you can't talk about your problems, they add up. If you don't decompress, that pot, it'll build up steam, and something's going to pop eventually.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's important to every now and then release some of that pressure cooker.
It is, man. You don't want it to boil over. And I think that's why organizations like 9line and then other organizations like the Task Force 12 exist. Mm-hmm. Because coming together and coordinating those services is the biggest success. I can say that 9line can do all these great things, and we can. That's a true statement. I can tell you all the things we do. I can tell you the barriers we break down. I can tell you the people we serve. It's an amazing thing. I can't solve it all by myself. 9line staff can't solve it all by themselves. Our case managers, our outreach team, our warehouse workers, all these people, we're not answering all the questions every day. So how do I best serve the need of my veterans, my clients, my fellow service members? I reach out to my other organizations. Mm-hmm. I work with those other organizations. We talk about what's effective in outreach and how, all these people aren't being touched, all these people aren't being reached.
I think we just covered that a little bit ago.
Yeah.
I think the best way to do it is to, with human connections can be great things. Yeah. Just me talking to you is going to have other people get directed to your services, versus if I didn't have this conversation with you, you might have those same exact people who are going to be turned on to the future, the possibility of the future, the possibility of a future for them, them knowing they have these resources. Without our people working together and trying to sort out what's kind of facing us, we're just saying, oh, there's a problem, and nothing's going to get done about it.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's really about coordinating those services. Again, I go back to, and I digress a little bit, but I go back to the point that when I got out, my transitioning time in service doesn't look the same as the veteran coming out today.
Oh, definitely not.
No. We were given 90 days, a couple briefs, a handshake, and a good luck, God bless. And that was it, right? Like, I remember one day I was reporting for duty, and the next day I was given my duty 214 and a stiff kick in the ass. Like, that was it. And I was fine with it because in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go out and get a $90,000 a year job. Like, life is going to be so tight. And I'm like, no, it's...
I can do anything now.
Right, but it wasn't. And so that's why I do what I do, man. Like I said, 9-Line success has been built on the back of not only what we do, but how we connect with the community. I go back to, like, again, the resource fair, because the reality was that was our first awakening. And that wasn't only the first awakening for us as an organization. That was an awakening to the community. Pierce County, Tacoma, King County, Thurston, Island County, all the way out to, like, Spokane, said, wow, you guys really hit a nerve here. Like, what can we do to support you? And that's how we built out. And then built up, honestly, from our engagement with outreach and events to also, like, our housing, our employment, all the things we're doing. So between our 6 houses and our 27 tenants at any given time that we have on the street coming into our program, and then to our employment where they're giving jobs. These aren't individuals who are coming to us and asking for a handout. These are individuals coming to us and saying, I'm having issues, can you help me? And if I can alleviate barriers, why not? So that was the beauty of how we built this out. And most of the people that come to us, again, it's not I need a handout, it's I just need a hand up.
100%. And I think it's really important to have that,
right,
to the difference of those two things, a handout versus a hand up, because handouts, there's a lot of people will just take it and they won't be able to build off of it because they'll be so focused on what it is. I think a hand up is so beneficial for so many reasons, because it'll allow them to look past their current situation and be able to look around and find the avenues they need to travel. So you spoke about having 6 houses, and also, so you're putting people into homes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're people who don't currently have homes, who are vets. You find them a place to sleep. You give them that is a huge bonus,
mm-hmm,
in trying to come back to a normalcy that we all see as Americans. We all want to, 3 hot in a cot can be normal for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
But having a roof over your head, being able to say that is a monumental thing for a lot of people. And then helping them find work, of course, so they can start jobs and then work into getting careers that they're happy with, and then find that work to family balance, and then bam, that stress level drops significantly, and they're able to find a new life, literally a new life. What other resources does 9-Line offer directly?
Well, and I'm glad you say directly, right? Because when people are here, right? Because
we're gonna be here for the next week,
right? Like, because when people say, like, oh, you can help people find housing, I'm like, no, we offer housing. Like, we own the houses that we're putting people in, right? So it's a shared housing model, and we put individuals into these houses with the understanding that they have 2 years from the point they enter the program until they graduate the program to build up their work history, to build up their access to basic needs, support services, stuff like that. And part of that, if you read the 2013 through 16 study, when President Obama took over in 16, to his stance on veteran homelessness, it was, how do we take our former heroes and put them somewhere where they can rebuild themselves, right? So we're talking about the most vulnerable military veterans, the literally homeless who are sleeping on the street in tents, no food, no access to services, who you read about in the newspaper, but what happens?
And these are the same exact people who aren't talked about for their amazing actions every single day.
Exactly.
I've watched people wearing old fatigues get up and stop people from getting mugged, stop young ladies from being assaulted. I've seen great, tremendous acts from our veterans. Don't necessarily have this off switch that says, okay, it's time to stop being a person who wants to help others. Right. It's usually not the case. And I've always been inspired by random acts of kindness. I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think that our veterans have so much more to offer than being looked at as just a homeless vet on the street. That's somebody who has a story, and their story doesn't necessarily need to be over. All they need is a hand up, as you said.
Well, and it gives them a certain level of accountability in their own thing, right? We've heard the term, you got your skin in the game, right? But again, when it comes to these people not wanting to have a hand out, it is a hand up. Because now you're giving them a sense of ownership of where the trajectory of their life is going. But we're holding them accountable, right? When they come to our program, we're like, check it out, you have to do this, 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 and this in order to get here. And that's okay. And then when we talk about the direct piece of the employment program, we contract with different organizations around the state. So we're actually providing jobs on site. So when these people come in with limited or no, let's say post-secondary education or no work experience outside of the service, now we can give them entry-level warehouse jobs. So I have guys who work on site in our warehouses providing contract work to different organizations across the state.
Yeah.
That allows them to, one, get work history under their belt. Two, because we contract with local organizations, I can also say, well, hey, this person's been working for me the last 2 years. They're about to graduate out of our program. They don't necessarily want to stay here, but you got a job for them. And that can be Oak Harbor Freight Line. That can be one of the truckers unions. That can be anybody. But it gives them that foot in the door.
Yes.
And because they've had that 2 years of continuity, now they have clothes that they can wear to a job interview. They have food that they have on their table. And they have the possibility of landing a really good job that's going to pay them what they're worth because they got that work history. It's a circular system of support. And then when they get out, that's relationships that we've cultivated. So as they begin to climb their chain in their life, that's someone I can come back to 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and say, hey, you're proof this works. Reinvest into this. That's that full circle concept. Because now they can help that next person who comes into the situation. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's that we all preach peer support. We all preach success. But Nine Line really puts its money where its mouth is, right? And that's just two examples. We have a whole outdoor wellness program with Route Step Outdoors. We have mental health. We have the Staff Sergeant Fox program with the QRF team where they can go out to rural parts of the state and actually intervene and get screenings done, get services offered, and connect them with VA resources, things like that. We have case management. The list goes on. So Nine Line is proof that that labor of love concept works. It doesn't have to be, not saying that organizations are, but when you come across those bureaucratic or state or county ran organizations,
I would call them government organizations.
Yeah.
Instead of people for people. That's what I would call it.
And you're familiar with that system of rote, right? Where it's just these constant cogs in the system, and it's just constantly. But then once one of those things are taken out, everything collapses, right?
Yes.
I mean, we proved it during COVID. The emergency response to hundreds of thousands of people who were losing their homes, not having their bills paid, people ending up on the street. It took less than a month for our whole checks and balances in this country to fall apart.
Yes.
Right? Not that I'm trying to paint a bad narrative there, but it was once again...
The truth is the truth.
Right. And it was once again the nonprofit sector who stood up to the plate, who provided the resources. The day the state shut down was the day that we had to reopen back up, right? We went out there and we said, hey, let's get food out to the people. Let's get bill support out to the people. Let's get CARES dollars out to the people.
It's time to get active. Yeah.
Right, let's stay active. And then we built what was a simple nonprofit into a fully functional, reintegrated, coordinated center of care. Right? Because, again, no offense to anybody out there, but the doors were shut. So veterans coming out of the service couldn't file a claim. They couldn't get access to their education benefits. They couldn't get access to affordable cost of living.
It's like a church in a hurricane in Texas, right?
That's it.
It's not to point fingers, but it happened.
Well said. Right. well said. And that's my point, man. It's coming full circle. It's understanding where we've been, where we're going, and who we are. Right? So I've never left Nine Line in a metric of support or a metric of understanding without people knowing that this is not about success for us, right? I'm a firm believer, this was my famous quote that I hope catches on at some point in life, right? But it's not about success versus failure. Just aim for results and success will follow.
Oh yeah, if you shoot for the moon, you're gonna get close, right?
And that's it, right? Because I'm not out there trying to get the pictures taken. I'm not out there trying to make my name known.
I'm going to be honest, I was trying to find pictures of you, and there's only 2 out there ever.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Because I don't I don't need to be that person, right? And again, society's just a really fucked up place right now.
Yeah.
And part of it is, like, we got people who go on Twitter or TikTok or all this, and they're like, oh, check it out, I was helping this homeless person today. But, you know, I'm like, I don't need a picture of me to tell me I did the right thing.
I've spoken about doing charity work. I don't think it's ever a good thing to show. What bothers me is a guy going and showing somebody's face, you know, like, oh, look at this. See, look at this. Look, I look good. Look how bad they look. I'm helping them. That's completely a self-centered thing in my personal opinion.
Well, it is.
And I don't want to like judge or anybody, but it kind of looks to me like it's just for was it clout or what do they call it now?
Yeah.
For approval, for to get the thumbs up or whatever. And I don't necessarily agree with that method. I think that when I do charity work, I don't like taking pictures of the actual thing. I'll take pictures of other people doing it and save them for me.
Right.
As a reminder for me, but I get uncomfortable when
and even being on site is different than like what you said, right? You're not going to go up and be like, hey, let's take a selfie together. I know I just fed you and all this other stuff. Like, come on, man, you're invading that person's privacy.
And no, and absolutely not.
And that's just to make you feel better, right? So again, I come back to like that full circle concept, man. What we're doing is empowering, educating, and uplifting individuals to become the best version of themselves, right? We're not making them feel bad for where they're at. We're not making them feel bad for where they're going, what the obstacles are going to look like. We're not judging them for their pasts. We're creating opportunities to have a brighter future. And we're doing that by, again, being humble about our own experiences, right? We have a 100% workforce here who are made up of veterans and dependents. These are people who have lived and walked that life. So then we come out of this and saying, look what Nine Line's doing, right? But we come out of this by saying, look at what Nine Line's doing, to having that little bit of arrogance like I was talking about, which is okay. I like to play hard, work hard, you know, all that good stuff.
Yes, I mean you have to be very, very passionate about anything to be successful and to be successful for others because that's the field you're in.
And that's it. So there has to be something that these people can aspire to, and that's where that arrogance is important. If I can't show them what the tangible outcome at the end looks like, what's their motivation to want to move forward, right? Show them that they have a place where they can call home. Provide them a livable income, allow them to put in a hard day's work, 8 hours, 9 hours, whatever it may be, and then show them the success of their predecessors who came before them, and look at them and say, wow, that person was like me, that person was homeless, that person was going through DV, that person was doing these things, and now that person is a manager at a company making how much a year? What? That's a possibility, and again, it's not an unrealistic ask. I'm not saying pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That garbage can be thrown out. I'm saying, look at that tangible outcome. That's doable. And that's why we do stand above the rest. Because we are asking for accountability of the people who come into the program. This isn't a handout, it's a hand up. And that's why when we do work with our counterparts, whoever I'm working with, I entrust with people's lives. It's not about making us look better. I can sell Nine Line all day, twice on Tuesday. I don't need to look better. We're a self-sustaining program. But I want to make sure the people who come into this program understand we love them, we care about them, and whoever I send them to out there, I entrust with their care. That's it. So that's what makes us who we are, because we are the people. We talk about, you know, the people on the street, all this other stuff. That's who we are. We were the people on the street. We're only here because we found out a way to make it work. That's it. That's the difference. So I could talk about that all day.
But that's necessarily, or that's like in a nutshell pretty much what Nine Line does. They don't just bring people in. Yeah. They don't just give them jobs. They make sure their jobs are sustainable with other companies. And you pretty much say, okay, you know, you have your wings back, now you can fly. Yeah. You're not going to sit on the ground with clip wings just because you fell out of the nest or whatever.
Well, and like, if you want me to ask, what was your MOS in the military?
I was a bosun mate, so I did old school sailor stuff, drive fast boats, bring on bombs, direct operations. Nice. Drive the aircraft carrier, drive small boats, shoot guns.
All around badass, just rocking
the grunts of the Navy is what I would say.
That's fair. That's fair. Yes. But
if I was anything else, I'd expect a whole lot of jokes, man. A whole lot of jokes.
That's fair. My brother gets the brunt of them. Don't worry.
Good.
But so that's my point, right? So you remember like the when you're doing standard maintenance on a vehicle, right? You have your before, your middle, and your after.
Yes.
Right. That's the concept we did here. So like from our very name, Nine Line, right? Whether it's the Nine Line medevac, where you call in the different things for support, or in this case, you have the triage. So when you go out and you're PMCSing, that's it. When you're PMCSing your vehicle, you go in, you identify the issues, you look at the issues, you document the issues, and you get the support for the issues. We take that application and we apply it to human beings, right? Some people call it holistic care. You're looking at the whole person. Some people call it this. It is nothing more than a human PMCS. You are taking and you are triaging the situation. You're identifying the person, you're identifying the barriers, and you're creating evidence-based outcomes for that person based on their own individual needs. And that's something that you just don't hear of, based on the fact that no nonprofit out there can say the same. And part of that, again, is that arrogance for us, but it's also understanding that we're doing this for the good of the community. And that means that no person is treated the same way when they come in. That means their individual background is taken into consideration, their individual issues is taken into consideration, their cultural and spiritual needs are taken into consideration. And then we have partners all over the state who are more than happy to fill in the gaps on where we can't.
Okay.
Right? And so earlier you heard me reference the Task Force 12. I know you're familiar with Nino,
yes, of
and
course,
and Mike Flood and all those guys. But that's why Nino said, let's come together. Let's create this collaborative. You know, it's almost 2 years. So 2 years ago when Nino came to us and said, hey guys, y'all are the most grassroots nonprofit organizations doing the work. I don't want the $5 million a year nonprofit coming up in here. I want the people who are genuinely doing the work.
Yes,
right.
Having real interactions with real results,
right,
affecting serious change.
And then you could take these individuals who are coming in from Tacoma, Lakewood, Linwood, every part of the state, and you can connect them with the different, that are coming in. And so no matter what corner of the state they were coming from, it was realistically understanding that we can connect them with this organization, this organization, this organization. And the Seahawks did their work. Not only did they do their work, but they put someone like Nino Gray in charge, someone who was dripping with passion, right? Someone who cares about his military community because he is a product of that military community.
Yes.
So Nino came together with Mike Flood, or Big Mike as we like to call him, you know. So came together with Mike, and they said, let's put our resources to work. Let's bring together these unbelievable change generators, leverage them working together, bridge the gap of their services, help them understanding what's available to them as resources, and then also put the Seahawks name on it, so then you have external providers coming in and saying, how can we support that?
Yes.
Right?
So like Microsoft, Boeing, everybody kind of keying in to put people and everybody's working together to provide people with jobs, with homes, and everything.
Because what's better for everyone other than coordinating that care? And then not only is it the Task Force 12, but then each one of those 12 organizations that's attached to the Seahawks has a network of its own as well. So now you have veterans who can come in to those organizations. We can still leverage those relationships with the Seahawks, like you said, Boeing, Microsoft, so on and so forth, but then also trickle down those resources, jobs, employment, housing, things like that, to the veterans who need them most. Nino was a genius for what he pulled.
Yeah.
And Mike was taking a huge shot on all of us to say, yes, we could. But we proved it can work.
I hope a lot of different NFL organizations take a look at that idea and try to apply it in their own way. I know it's not going to be exactly the same because they don't have the same resources at their fingertips. Right. But I know that in the Pacific Northwest here, not just Nine Line, but other organizations that you guys also work with are major contributors to actually dealing with people in real life.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just, yes, this is what we've done. We put on a fundraiser or we put on this. Like at the end of the day, where a lot of people have like big concerns about nonprofits, like a lack of trust and all that stuff, because where do the funds go? And if the funds are going directly to people, like 501, I think it's 501ch or whatever.
It's 501c3, but
501c3, one of the C's, right?
Yeah.
One of the C17, I don't know. So
I love it.
But a lot of people worry about where did actually this stuff goes to, and I've been able to see some of your the results of what Nine Line has been doing, and I think it's really awesome. And I love why you started it. I love the idea of linking up with Task Force 12 with going over, and me as a person who can be prideful at times. It's hard to work with others sometimes. Yeah. It's hard to deal with somebody else who has their own plan. Too many Chiefs, not enough Indians, whatever, right? But I really commend you for also crossing those different lines that separate us as nonprofits, as companies as anything. Like obviously we're all from different branches, right? You're crossing borders to help other people, and I think that's what a lot of people need, those barriers removed in life. It's like one of the biggest things that I've ever tried to work on with this product. I do it all in my free time. I usually put ladies into self-defense classes. I try to do things with all the funds that I create with this. I try to help people out. Anybody who needs a DV resource, I try to have people who've experienced domestic violence and have domestic violence response coordinators, suicide prevention coordinators, sexual assault prevention response for JBLM is the next person I'm reaching out to this week, and just try to find different people for resources because I don't have all the answers. All I can do is listen and share. Yeah. And the people that listen to my stuff, they like the raw honesty. You're going to hear people swear. You're going to hear people talk about the worst, most dampering, difficult, self-harm filled moment of their life or addiction filled moment where they made all the wrong mistakes, their whole family shunned them except for one person. That one person was enough hope. Real, raw, passionate, helping other people. And that is something that I recognize also with how you feel about Nine Line and about the interaction you have with other people, man. I really think that's awesome.
Well, well, thank you. First of all, I appreciate that because this is my baby, right? Like when I built Nine Line, I had no idea what this was going to look like, right? Like there was a nonprofit out there for everything. You know, you read about it statistically, like there's 22,000 different nonprofits for veteran services everywhere. You know, and so really, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to hold the people accountable, but I also wanted to provide a resource that wasn't dependent on grants, that wasn't dependent on competition. It wasn't about outdoing my competitors. It was about how can we better collaborate, how can we better support. And it really came down to understanding that, you know, people have genuine concerns about the nonprofit sector because of accountability, right?
Yeah.
But then just be transparent, just be honest. And as soon as we started having those honest conversations with people, they're like, oh, you're really doing this. And it didn't matter if it was the business sector. It didn't matter if it was the government sector. It didn't matter if it was the state, federal. It didn't matter. People started wanting to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's what we delivered. It was a promise. Well, not only that we delivered, but we delivered on, right? We said, we promise we will do this. We raised expectations, and then we blew that shit out the water, man.
Yeah.
Like we said.
Sitting on committees, man, I know that a lot of people that are in the military, they have a big issue with government afterwards, after seeing what bureaucracy, what poor leadership styles and stuff like that. Like I recognize a lot of poor leadership within the military, within the government. I'm not going to say F the Army or F the Navy because I don't feel that way, because it's made up of the people. And when we all can remember that the root of everything in America is just the people, and we take care of other people, more will show up, and people who feel the same way about taking care of others are going to be there to support the idea.
Well, and human beings are innately good.
Yes.
Right? Like I reference, I'm going to give her credit for this, because Mary Forbes, the assistant director of the WDVA, said that to me one time. We were talking, and she's like, you know, Shawn, human beings are innately good. And I was like, you know, Mary, I'd agree with you. And when you start helping people understand, like, don't get me wrong, we're human beings. We all have our own selfish tendencies.
Yes, we have light and darkness within all of us.
Absolutely. Like, right, if I'm on vacation and I say I want my fucking drink now, I want my drink now.
Yeah,
right?
Man.
Right, like there's selfish intent. I'm not that. I'd be wrong, and I would be lying and doing a disservice if I said there wasn't. But human beings are innately good.
Yes.
When you look at the clear observation of people, if I go and I approach, and I have, you know, working with VA mental health, the Larry Pruitts of the world, one of my dear friends, I love that man. He has done so much for veterans. Mary Forbes, with what she's doing at the WDVA, Alfie Alvarado, my own people here, Veronica Davis. That woman wakes up every morning, breathes, and sleeps Nine Line Veteran Services. Tony Dayton, you very much know Tony.
Yeah, I know Tony, man. He calls me all the time.
Yeah, Tony is driven, man. Like, these are people who not only motivate me, but make me want to be a better person. And when I came to them and I said, this is what we want to accomplish, they said, well, you're really trying to rewrite the script. But they were okay with it. Yeah. And I said, well, if you stay on this ride with me, like, we're going to rewrite it. And we did. And we took it all the way up to the governor's office. We took it across 44 different states. We incorporated a transition program, ETS sponsorship, that not only reaches veterans when they come out the door, but reaches their family, approaches their family. And then the VA entrusted us, Nine Line, to sign a contract to provide those services under the Staff Sergeant Fox grant.
Yes.
To hundreds, if not thousands, of veterans and their families across the state and across the country. Like, what? we knew what we wanted to do, and we said, please hold us accountable, which you don't hear from nonprofits very often. Again, this is not me down talking anybody or attacking anybody.
You don't generally hear it. You don't generally hear, please hold me accountable.
Right.
There's only two I've heard. It's you and then We the Female. She's a survivor of domestic violence, and she speaks out avidly about it. She is all about helping arm the women, and I love it. And one of my favorite things that she says is, you can check my stats. Please do. Please check my stats. There's nothing better for me. She says there's nothing better for me than putting a young lady who used to think of herself as a victim, and now to put a gun in her hand, have her throw some bullets at something that's not moving and not breathing, and having a moment of complete focus on just one thing can absolutely change everything. And that goes for working at your business or working for helping other people in your point of view, because you're not. This is obviously in the business. You're actively just working out to reach out and do great things for people, man.
And that's it. If I can create opportunities for people who genuinely need them, and I'm not talking about the repeat offenders. When you've worked in social services and human services, okay, let me just put this plug in there now. I'm going to offend somebody, and I'm okay with that.
Okay. Yeah. Tell the truth, please.
Yeah. So when you've worked in human and social services long enough, you have what's called the repeat offenders, right? And those repeat offenders typically
try to work the system.
Well, work the system one, and then they know which historical social service organizations they can go to get those services, because it's the same processes and they haven't changed in 30, 40, 50 years. And that's why you can't become this stagnant entity, right? You have to continue to grow. You have to continue to change. And the benefit for Nightline is we've taken a population that is constantly changing, right?
Yeah.
And said, let us adjust our services, our programming, everything to you, right? And then on top of it, we've said to our counterparts, we've said to our sponsors, we've said to our federal, state, nonprofit, investor, all these people, hold us accountable. And people are looking at us like, well, that's a big thing to say. And I'm like, well, look, you can go over our financials, you can go over our charter, you can go over our handbooks, you can go over everything. I got nothing to hide. And we did that to such a point where it's all posted online.
Good.
Right? You go on GuideStar, anything and everything you want to know about us, right there.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Got nothing to hide, man. So it comes down to...
And that builds trust as well, right? And you want people to believe in what you believe in, and you also want them to trust that you're doing it for the right reasons, with the right resources, and you're also... people, obviously, anyone's going to listen to this is going to know you're very passionate about this.
Oh, yeah.
And competitive with just yourself yesterday, and also with people who you don't see going on the right path. Helping somebody should not be like we talked about earlier. It should not be oh, look at all this stuff. Look at all my shit. That's not what it's supposed to be. Helping people is supposed to be something that helps them. And then, you know what, but then right after it's done, do give yourself a pat on the back, because you did something more than just for yourself.
Right. If I was trying to make money, I wouldn't be sitting in a business park in Fife.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I looked up Fife, and I'm like, oh my God, I remember Fife. Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't be right. I promise you, the money's going where it needs to go.
Bellevue.
Right.
You know
I'll be chilling in Bellevue or somewhere out there.
Yes.
But that's my point, man. Like just having that physical presence and being that resource for people. And I've heard so many amazing stories over the years, man. And honestly, like, just to know the impact of the lives we touch and the people we serve and the change we make, right? So,
hey, give me your two favorite success stories that you've heard come out of Nightline.
Oh my God, thank you. So
just two random on top of your head.
No, absolutely. So the number one I love sharing with people, man. The number one, I had this young lady, first time at the Veterans Resource Fair. She came in and I was like, damn, you're one of my students. And because I met her at Clover Park Technical College. She was in her associate's program. One morning I came out, and it's not there anymore, they tore it down, but there was an old warehouse at Clover Park. And in that warehouse was the vet center. We had a couch, a desk, a couple computers, nothing extravagant, but like,
it was something though.
And it was just for the veterans, and they loved that. So this young lady would come in with her daughter every morning, and I didn't think too much about it. Like, out of my own pocket, I would pay for coffee, cups of noodles, chips, cookies, like the packs you can get,
Yeah.
So she would come in every morning. Her and her daughter would have a cup of joe, or her daughter would have an apple juice or whatever, and then some cookies and some noodles or whatever. And I mean, the daycare was on campus, so I'm just assuming like you're dropping your kid off. You know what I mean? Well, one night I came out, And this young lady was sleeping in her car in the parking lot. So I called up CCS.
Her and her daughter.
Oh, yeah.
And they came in every day, and that was their place to be.
And that was their place where they got food. That's where they slept. Everything. I had no idea. And so it really tore my heart, man. Like, I mean, it brought tears to my eyes. And so I called Catholic Community Services, and at the time they had the SSVF program, the Supportive Services for Veteran Families. I stayed there with that young lady until 3 a.m. And then I let her sleep in the parking lot, came back the next morning, and one of the case managers from the CCS has come down, and we'd worked together and got them in a house literally that Friday. Yeah. And that happened on a Monday. So this young lady, fast forward, she came to the resource fair one year. I think it was 2016, 17, one of the years. And it melted my heart, man. She came in, and her daughter was a little bit older. She had graduated from UW with her master's degree.
What?
In sociology.
That is awesome.
Yeah, her MSW. And her daughter and her brought me some cupcakes, and it was like purple and gold, for UW and everything. And she said, thank you. Wow. And she goes, I want to start volunteering here. And I was like, by all means. And so they were volunteering that day and helping out with the gear and everything. And she was kind of like the little cheerleader, She was like maybe 9, 10 years old, So not too old, but not too young, you know what I mean?
Wow.
So, but that was my number one. And then my number two story is always this young lady that Tony Dayton and myself helped. Yeah, I'm gonna give Tony his kudos. You can tell him or not, I don't care, whatever. But anyway,
he has some choice words to say for so to pass on to you when I'm off air.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, tell you to fuck off.
Yeah. Tony, if you're listening, go fuck yourself.
Okay.
Anyway, so love you though, buddy. So no, Tony and I worked with this woman, and Tony was actually with the National Alliance to End Veteran Suicide at the time. And again, a resource fair story, man. This young lady came in, she didn't have housing, she didn't have anything. And Tony was just about to start the program with Veterans Lending Group. And he was telling me about how he's going to build out this program to get houses and help veterans and do all these things. I was like, that's what's up, buddy. And Tony and I, God, dude, we've been friends for years. That's my dude. I talk shit to him because he's crazy, but that's my dude.
Yeah.
So we literally had talked to one of the housing providers on site and got her and her boyfriend in on some housing. And she broke down because she doesn't remember the last time she actually had a warm roof over her head or a hot meal or anything like that. And it's moments like that, man. It's moments like that that make it truly the most amazing gift that you can ever, as a human being, experience. Those stories are what keeps us motivated, right? I by no means will ever be a millionaire from this. And I by no means want to be. The little cards, the little pictures, all the little things we get, all the little thank yous, and work truly is a thankless job, but all the little things we get from this is a reminder that we are doing the right thing. And as a soldier, as someone that carries a lot of weight in my soul, I should say, it's a blessing every day to be able to change people's lives, knowing that I myself am still a valuable human, that there are things that I'm not proud of, there are still ghosts that haunt my closet, but it's a blessing. It's a blessing to know that I can make a difference in people's lives. And really my only goal I ever held myself to, the only rule I ever held myself to, was I had to change one person's life. I've done more than that. Yeah. And I'm okay with that, because it's beautiful, and I love it every day of my life. And that's what Nine Line's about, man.
So you would say that you found your purpose in helping others find theirs?
Absolutely. It's beautiful.
That's awesome.
I cannot imagine doing anything else with my life.
Well, you know what? I think you definitely have something serious here, man. I'm going to be obviously referring as many people as I can to you, because I keep running into people. I keep getting people reaching out to me all over the area. I don't know what to do with my life, and I try to help as much as I can, but I'm only one person. I don't have a list of resources or, you're in this state? Okay, give me 10 minutes. Call this number. I don't have that. Right. I don't have that ability. I reached out to Josh more, and now Tony as well, and I'm going to be reaching out to you as well. But being able to have somebody to send others to who are in need is great. What are you in trouble in your Navy, and you need to find out some information, you just resort to a manual. There's no manual on transitioning out of the military, and that's what I look at in Nine Line, and me being able to to share different stories on my show
Yeah.
as. I do it for a similar reason that you do. I promise you, if Off the Deep End wasn't by itself wasn't already taken,
Yeah.
and I wish I came up with it first, but somebody already did. So I mean, I have way more episodes than them with great people.
Right.
And I really find so much value in being able to listen to somebody else's experience share their story, not the story that they're told to share, not the story of a celebrity with sponsorships.
Right.
I want to hear real, raw, uncut stuff, and that's what you gave me today, man. I really do appreciate it, and I'm excited to send people your way, because there's a lot of people out there who don't have information.
Yeah.
You know, the messages just pour in for me after every episode I put out about domestic violence or about transitioning out of the military. Oh man, I'm struggling too. Like, what did you do? What worked for me might not work for everybody else.
Right.
But there's a hub now where you can find what works for you. So
Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate having you on and you taking the time to do this, Shawn. I love what your organization does, and I'm definitely a big supporter of what you got going on here.
I appreciate that, brother. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, much love, brother.
Yep.